AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host, Mark Kelly, brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Today, our guest is Brian Dalessandro. Brian is Head of Data Science for Sparkbeyond. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure. So Brian, please start with a little bit of background of yourself, what your role is, and a little bit about what Sparkbeyond does.
I've been a data scientist for, I guess, a decade, but my career spans close to 2 now. I was just doing this work before it was called data science. Probably just by virtue of timing, one of the first data scientists in New York, in the sense that I was the first person I knew that actually had the title of data science starting back in 2009. Since officially a data scientist, I've been my career is mostly focused on managing and leading teams. So I've worked. I tend to favor smaller startups. So I've been an early employee or first data scientist for a few now, and have helped grow the organization through data science and grow the data science team as a result through the growth of the organization.
Thank you for that. And that leads you to your role here at Sparkbeyond. So for anyone listening who's not familiar with the company, please shed some light on some of the interesting work you guys are involved in.
Yeah, so first let me give a high-level overview of Sparkbeyond. It's an Israeli-based tech startup company. We're about 5 years old with operations globally. So we have hubs in North America, which is New York, London, and Singapore. Sparkbeyond, at its core, is a platform. It's a research platform. We actually are working on multiple types of research platform. The mission is to, it's a rather lofty statement, but it's harness the power of collective intelligence to solve the world's most complex problems. And one way we do that with our core platform called the ideation machine is it's like a search engine for hypotheses, and translating that to traditional data scientist machine learning workflow is we have a system that can automatically generate millions of features, right? So we can connect your data set to multiple third-party data sets that we've indexed, so doing all this automatically. And once you have your features designed, defined, analyzed, we can connect that to the actual model building process. So it's an end-to-end platform for understanding your data, understanding the phenomenon driving signals, and can build state-of-the-art machine learning models based off of a very unique and expressive system of explicit feature engineering. And it's all done with an eye towards transparency. We want to focus on, where deep learning is a technology that's quite powerful because of its implicit feature engineering. We have a system that takes a different approach, which is explicit feature engineering, and delivers to you both a model and a way to understand your data and a way to create insights that, of course, give transparency towards the whole process, but also hopefully helps the analysts have a better understanding of the data or the processes at hand.
And with that transparency and understanding comes trust in the technology, which would make for more wider adaptation. That's amazing. Could you give some recent examples of real case application uses, whether it by industry or particular clients where you've impacted a business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got use cases across several dozen industries. So we're a general purpose platform, but we tend to have, I would say, favorites. In particular, we are quite sought after in what you might call traditional industries, and these are industries that have been doing business for hundreds of years, perhaps. They tend to be regulated. They tend to, I would say, have to make higher stakes decision. And by a high stakes decision, I mean an ad, if you serve an ad to the wrong person, chances are no one even notices, right? You might lose a bit of efficiency and money, but the Googles and Facebooks, right? Although they might, they're high stakes players, but a lot of their core decision making through AI is just very low stakes. Now, if you think about administering a clinical trial with a pharmaceutical company, or granting life insurance, or determining if wire transfer, like a large denominated wire transfer from a bank, is fraud. These are very much high stakes types of decisions where like lives and large sums of money are at play. And so we tend to have high penetration in these types of organizations. And back to what we were just saying, I think transparency and trust are some of the core drivers of that. Like, while predictive accuracy is generally always sought after, it's not necessarily at the expense of understanding the underlying drivers of the model. And that's, very often an explicit constraint when dealing with regulators, right? They want to know exactly why and how the machine is making decisions. And so with our platform, the automated aspect is like a sought after feature in and of itself, because it's saving time and helping people do more with less. But the actual output being fairly transparent and easy to interpret, right, in various ways, makes it a very desirable product for some of these types of institutions.
Absolutely. And it certainly helps them accelerate and modernize their traditional business models. With the area that you're operating in, and as it's generalist and it gives you options to impact so many different industries, where do you see the biggest impact that Sparkbeyond can have over the next 3 to 5 years?
The biggest driver of impact, I think, is less AI, and it's the methodology around AI. I think, methodology, particularly agile methodology and agile thinking, is very much enabled by software, right? And if, the three things that I think most data science teams need, and I think a lot of data science teams lack, particularly outside of technology, software companies, is processes that have collaboration, agility, and transparency, right? And the collaboration side is you'll frequently find a Fortune 100 company with 100,000 employees globally having what you call like the data science or AI center of excellence. And what this means is there's an office in one part of the country with a lot of brilliant people who have access to the global data sets, and they're solving problems often for an operations or marketing team or product team in a completely different country. So there's many geographic, language, and logistical barriers like preventing the right level of collaboration and communication between teams. And it's a often cited problem that data scientists are, like one big risk of data science is solving the wrong problem, right? Or sometimes as you translate business needs into a KPI and then try to think about what data best represents that KPI and then translate it further into a data science problem, multiple layers of translation ends up being like a game of telephone that means oftentimes the data science project becomes more of an academic exercise because they've built something that easily wasn't fully, either wasn't fully aligned with the business goal or is something that's infeasible from an operational or an execution standpoint. And so this often happens when you don't have the right level of collaboration and integration of teams. And certainly, there's collaborative software tools out there that enable that. Sparkbeyond, I think, is quite good for the agility and trust side. Like, basically, the more you can automate, the more projects a data scientist can work on. To me, there's a new risk associated with data science management, data science projects that most standard business processes don't have, and I call that signal risk. And with signal risk, you might be answering the right question, right? So you're fully aligned on that, and you know exactly how the implementation is going to work. But the big question with data science projects, and we'll include AI there, is do you have the right data to solve this problem, right? And so you might, despite everything being perfectly lined up, that, the data just, maybe the model gives you very little lift on top of what has already been done, or you just don't have the right variables, or you might have the right data, but you just don't have the ability to kind of munge it, clean it in a way that best solves the problem. This is what I call signal risk. And this is a big reason why oftentimes a data science project, quote unquote, fails. And when dealing with risk, the best approach to risk management is to take a portfolio approach, because some projects are going to exceed your expectations, many are going to flop, and so the more you can do, particularly in parallel, the more likely a team is going to find success. And this is where the right research platform, the right tool set, and the right like data science workbench is going to make a huge difference. Because if I can, and for us, we're not just a feature engineering platform, but that's probably what, if you were to compare us to other platforms out there, I think that's what makes us the most unique. It's commonly understood that data scientists spend 80% of their time doing sort of data munging, feature engineering, right? And even my own experience, I could spend a month thinking about the features, coding them up, and then the actual model building phase, algorithm selection, is 5 lines of code, and just let it run overnight, and in the morning I have an answer. And so like the real bottleneck is in coming up with the ideas on how to express the signal or how to find the signal, and then coding it up, right? And so there's 2 bottlenecks there: my own creativity, and then my own like limited effort and time. So if we can solve those problems with software, then you're actually taking away the largest chunk of where data scientists spends their time. And certainly if you can reduce 5 weeks down to a day, you increase the opportunity for agility. And so when we work with a client, a lot of what we're bringing to them is not just software, it's agility. And if the software isn't enough, we can help train them on how to actually think in a more agile fashion.
Here at Alldus, we want to make the hiring process easier for all. Whether you're an employer or an aspiring employee, we have the service for you. For full-time work, Alldus will partner with you to find the best person for the position. Using both our network and our rigorous qualification process, we ensure that only the best talent is shortlisted. We will manage the process and work with you to select our most suitable candidate for your organisation. We also offer excellent temp hiring services. At Alldus, we provide a great opportunity to help you and our candidate make the right choice. The contract period is one long interview for your full-time opening, and the extended experience with our consultant helps you make the best decision. Alldus International is here to quickly help you find the best AI candidate. Our experts stay in close contact with our consultants throughout the duration of the contract, ensuring they have everything they need to get the job done.
What are the biggest challenges you face when you engage with a new client who, depending on their industry and business model, may have certain restrictions on belief, ability? So how do you overcome that? What approach can you take that can help other people listening to help educate the external people?
Yeah, I think this is a classic problem, and one that I've dealt with my entire career, not just at Sparkbeyond, but even when I've worked at tech companies. I found that there are people who are people understand the hype of AI. They understand it's important. They understand that it's driving a lot of value at Google and the big cloud companies and Facebook, but they don't necessarily connect it to their exact business problem or their industry. One thing as a data science leader, it's often my job to be the evangelist and almost salesman for AI, because it's self-preservation at stake, because if I can't sell the opportunity, then there's really no need to pay my salary. But what I found is, first of all, you need to speak their language. I'm not going to go to them and explain to them how truly amazing it is that a neural net can classify a dog from a cat in a picture, right? Which is a very easy problem these days. I want to understand their business. What KPI? What are you trying to drive? What are you trying to do? When I understand their KPI, then I can think about, okay, well, is there a realistic opportunity to improve this KPI with data? And for one thing, you build a lot of credibility when you actually go to them and say, you know what, this is not a good use case for data science. And I've done this in prior jobs. And we do this at Sparkbeyond. We work with a client and they come to us and they say, well, I think we have data, or we have some data, and here's the metric we want to have. When we look at the data, we think about the metric, we think about the actionability of any particular model, and we say, this is not going to work out. So we actually don't think we should do business together, at least for this particular use case. Let's find, maybe let's wait 6 months from now when you have different problems that are your focus. That builds a lot of credibility. So setting expectations right. And then, when you think about the KPI, be realistic and not promising that you're going to double their KPI. But when you sort of forecast how you might change the KPI, it also can't be too small, so it's not worth investing in. So you need to find that sweet spot. And that's I think this is a big art that product managers do a lot as well. But ultimately, it's one needs to try to find out the quick wins, right? So if you think about what is, when you work with a potential business partner to do data science use cases, first of all, one should try to identify multiple. Don't just set your sights on one, because again, there's always a high probability of failure for any one use case. So look at, build a landscape, or try to get a survey of all the different use cases that are available. Do a simple analysis of what's the feasibility, right? And feasibility would include implementation costs. Is the data actually available? And then just use your gut feel, between you as the data scientist or expert in the AI side and the business partner who's the domain expert. Visualize, if I had the perfect model, what could the real potential be, right? And you put those against each other, and then there's, the left-hand side of the chart at the top, that's the proverbial low-hanging fruit. So start there. And with an agile approach, where you're learning and kind of changing course as needed, you basically can prove out that, yes, there actually is potential for data-driven approaches. And part of that process, there's the kind of the scoping side. But what you're really doing throughout that process is developing a playbook and a muscle for executing on these types of projects. Because what people oftentimes business leaders don't realize is that once you have the model and the data, the insights, and then the model, everything rests, all impact and value rests upon your ability to execute and make these actionable.
You spoke to me previously about the productivity paradox in relation to maximizing the ROI on data science teams and projects. So it'd be interesting to get your perspective on how you've managed to successfully grow and build teams several times over, where a lot of organizations struggle to maximize the return on data science as a function.
At this stage, I've been a manager in the incubator and sort of grower of 3 teams at different startups. And, I think every organization has its own unique properties, and you often have to improvise according to specific organizational details, but there are some patterns. First and foremost, one needs to really do a good job of auditing exactly what the organization needs from a data perspective. There's this common chart that gets shown at conferences, and I'm guilty of doing this myself. It's the data science hierarchy of needs. And, it's modeled after Maslow. And, at the base layer is essentially data and data infrastructure. And then there's BI, then there's machine learning, predictive analytics, and then there's hardcore AI. And I, both, frankly, when I was jobs hunting, I would work with, I would be interviewing for VP of AI or VP of machine learning. And I'm talking to the CTO or whoever is the hiring manager about the role. And I'm just, okay, I'm expecting to jump in there and start building neural networks and, just really pushing deep learning. And then I found out that, they actually don't have any data infrastructure. And so, the parable there is that, one needs to really audit the organization in terms of what are their needs from a product, operations, business standpoint, and plus where are they within this data science hierarchy of needs? Because that determines who you need to hire. If you don't even have data yet, then you probably shouldn't be hiring an AI expert. You should be hiring 3 data engineers and maybe a general purpose data scientist who can help or design model of what the data should be used for, which can inform the data engineering side. The other aspect is from the business needs, you might find that while the business is hiring for an AI expert, really they just need someone to build a logistic regression over one use case, right? And so you also might find that certain businesses really have a lot of logistics, it's like supply chain management, and that's they're not actually building machine learning problems. What they need is someone who is an operations research specialist who can do kind of like constrained optimization. And I found that most data scientists don't know how to solve those types of problems. It's very specialized. Or a business might be dealing with complex kind of like economic questions like balancing supply and demand in marketplaces, or needing to, a lot of advertising companies don't necessarily need to do predictive modeling. They need to be able to do measurement, like causal statistics and measurement. And so, there are areas of specialty within, the entire umbrella of what we call data science that, you can't just generally assume every data scientist is trained in some of these kind of more deep areas of focus. So it's important to understand exactly, what the organization needs, right? And then, once you have a good sense of whether you need engineers or analysts or statisticians or economists, operations research specialists, right? Like that whole through the whole spectrum, then you start writing job descriptions that fit the need. I found though that sometimes it's good to just put data scientist on the job description, because you might say I'm looking for an OR specialist or a statistical researcher, and you get one application a week, and then as soon as you change it to data scientist, you get like 50. So there's a sort of a marketing aspect to it, and then from there it's I like to crawl before walking and then running, and with that I mean, as I was sort of mentioning before, like prove the value, like start with a small team, prove the value, get a few quick wins before going all in, because data scientists are expensive. Hiring and onboarding is an expensive and time-consuming process. So, if you think you need 20 people, you don't want to do that naively, right? So start with 5, make sure you have the data infrastructure in place, do a quick wins, work, build that muscle memory for the organization. And then when you're ready, just create a process where you can hire at scale and sort of kind of amortize a lot of the hiring and onboarding at once, and then distribute that team throughout the organization.
I think that's a perfect ending to what's been a really informative interview. Brian, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Sure, that was fun.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.